Chapter 8. The Virtue of Freedom. From where you're kneeling, it must seem like an 18-carat string of bad luck. But the truth is, the game was rigged from the start. What's it like to see your dreams within your grasp? A feeling like no other. In my last attempt, born of desperation, I had launched myself into an impossible situation out of sheer panic and fear of what would happen had I stayed. It was little more than a mad rush into the unknown. It had failed because I had been too hopeful, too blinded by dreams and wishes of what I was going to do once out of Philadelphia to have presence of mind to actually do it. I had been doomed to failure before I had even started, becoming nothing more than a game to the Griffin guards wanting to check the Sentry's capabilities. In the moment of believing that freedom would be mine, Regini's bullet had torn my hopes apart. Rougher than ever, I was hurled back into the pits of Philadelphia, my confidence shattered and spirit almost broken. For me, a slave only used to obeying others. The idea that my strength would come from others willing to follow me or lead me through choice was bewildering. Sure, I'd taken inspiration from ponies such as Little Pip, Sundial, and the Mare, but to have ponies willing to stay with me every step of the way, that was new. At Mid-Stable 93, I had been made to realise that the events of the past were not truly that which defined us. Memory held power, both to harm us and to help uplift ourselves. The Ministry scientists had sought to use memories to aid ponies in becoming better through skills and learning, even if it had been mired in the living memories of tragedy. Glimmerlight had shown me that the correct memory at the right time had the power to simply inspire. To remind us that we shouldn't frown because it was lost, but to smile because it had happened. To show us that our dreams were still out there, waiting for us to go and claim them. Protégé had once told me that I didn't understand what freedom was, that I could never hope to have the strength to escape Philadelphia until I knew what it felt like to think and make every choice for myself. From the Master through the Mall, the Crater, Hearts and Hooves Hospital, and the nightmares of a dead stable, I had been pushing myself further and further to gain what confidence I could for the escape attempt I knew was about to happen. I had allies aiding me, pushing me along, sharing our dreams into one unceasing and unflinching need to escape. A chance like no other. We were outside the walls. Steel Rangers had Red Eye's forces distracted. The cover of an entire city nearby with both the strength of Brimstone Blitz and the resource intelligence of Glimmerlight. I could feel it. Everything I had ever truly wanted surging in my heart, telling me that we could do it. We could. But at that point, there was no way to know the truth. To know that after this one chaotic rush, I would be homeward bound. Sounds. Just the noise of chaos around me, assaulting my ears.
Shit! Get down! Get down! Where did they come from?
Griffins! They're hiding on the rooftops! Oh, goddesses!
Murky! Just watch the road! They've been dropping mines! They're still following us!
Small pings of metal, each sharp and tinny.
What was that? I said they're dropping mines! Watch out!
An explosion, so very violent and sudden, rolling off buildings again and again amongst falling debris. Glimmer, you...
I think... just shrapnel. Murky, are you alright?
I...
Hold on, we'll get out of here. We'll all get out of here. Just a little further.
Where's Brimstone?
I don't know. He must be up ahead at the bank or got separated or something. We need to keep going. Find something to help you and me.
Heavy sounds. Metal hooves crashing through rubble and cracked tarmac.
The Rangers, they're still in the street. Keep going. Keep going.
My My leg!
I know, but we need to go now. Get your me inside, Murky. We're almost there.
And from the distance, a shrieking whistle of something approaching rapidly, rocketing into a solid wall with a deafening roar of a warhead's detonation.
Watch the building! It's coming down!
Finally, the slow creaking of foundations and rebar starting to bend and give way, crashing down like an avalanche of wood and stone.
Oh no. Murky! Murky! No! Get off me! Get off! My friend! He's still in... Ah!
Past the chaos of battle and danger, it slowly drifted away, being replaced by a gentle warmth. It was soft and comforting, draped over me. Before, I might not have known, but the feeling of somebody else holding me closely was unmistakable after that one life-changing embrace Glimmerlight had given me. The first I'd ever known as a grown pony. I lay amongst the quiet bliss of another. A sense of serenity and simply taking comfort in somebody else's presence, calming my nerves. Felt my hooves against their soft, thick mane, and heard another's heartbeat. A dream. So obviously a dream. I knew who I wanted to be, but was it her? Was it my saviour, my Lightbringer, coming back to rescue me from the searing pain left in me from an hour solid of galloping under fire and taking wounds? I'd like that. To hold her close. I felt myself squeeze a little tighter in need. Soothing delight tinting my every sense as I felt them return the favour. My eyes wouldn't open, wouldn't see. I simply rested, hearing her voice. 5 words. 5 words that made my spirit stir and my heart steel against all adversary, but only one which I could identify. Together. Light stabbed into my eyes. Dizzy, tangled, and weighed down, I wanted to kick and struggle, but an overwhelming tiredness overtook me. My vision was nothing but white. A bright illumination that slowly began to fade just as much as a creeping agony began to settle in on my skull. I was under something heavy and rugged. A coarse blanket? Something was moving around me in a circle, whirling like the threshing machine, softly whopping away. Every limb felt heavy when I tried to lift them, to roll, and try to stand. I could hear trotting nearby, some pony whistling and getting closer. Wanting to try and cry out for Glimmerlight, I instead felt my throat dry up and turn raspy. How long had it been since I'd last taken Radaway?
Well, how about that?
An older stallion, his voice drawling and tinged with an accent I'd only heard every so often. Movement began to fade into my sight, and my centre of balance finally detected that I was looking upwards. The splitting headache only became worse as I shifted uncomfortably to try and see who it was. Blinking. Ow, even that hurt. I saw the silhouette gradually fade into a pony trotting up to sit beside me. I tried to shift before stifling back a high-pitched cry. My head flared and fired a lance of pain from left to right between the ears. Falling back, I patted on the couch or something.
Whoa, easy there, easy. Just relax a second and get your bearings.
I felt a hoof rest on my side, ever so gently pressing me back against the couch until I stopped wriggling. Blinking rapidly, finally things were coming into focus. A musty old room, filled with antique furniture and lit by a hazy yellow drifting through closed blinds over the windows. The old stallion was right before me. Setting my vision on him, struggling to keep my eyes open, I saw a rust-coloured earth pony sitting upon an old cushion. A calm smile rested on his face, his eyes meeting mine.
You've been out a couple of hours now. I had to give you something to keep you asleep until the worst was over. Take it slow and let's see what the damage is.
Moving my head elicited another sharp pain, as though some pony had just hit me over the head with a wooden stick. Something about why I knew what that precisely felt like said a lot about a particular old master of mine. With slow effort, I finally got my hooves beneath me, unsteadily beginning to settle down on all fours. With my size, I could sit right across the couch fairly easily to face my... helper? I hoped so. Something I don't quite know.
Let's just keep it simple there. How about your name?
He sat back again once I had risen from my side, smoothing out the tough leather claddings he wore and adjusting the red handkerchief. I noticed he did that a lot, like it never quite sat comfortably. Murky number 7.
Can't say it's anything I'd have picked, but if that's your name, it's your name. Now I'm Doc Minstrel. Welcome to my quaint little home. And now, I had to do a little bit of work to keeping you alive back there. You were pretty beat up when I found you.
Slowly moving on seemingly creaky old limbs, Minstrel leant down and retrieved a cracked, dusty mirror between his front hooves. Blowing over it enough to raise a little cloud of stagnant dust, he set it down before me, allowing me to gaze down. The dust remained still in the thick interior air before dispersing and disappearing within the beams of light in through the windows.
Now, I did the best I could, but can't say I could make it perfect again.
Closing my eyes, I felt my hooves touch the mirror. The cool, burnished brass around it felt all too similar to the feeling in my gut. My imagination running riot. My head was hurting so much. He said it wasn't perfect again. What had happened to me? I didn't want to open my eyes. Dreading the moment, the dull aching in my forehead matching the weak beating of my heart, I slid my eyes open and looked down upon myself. I gasped sharply, turning to a sharp yelp. First in shock, then in pain, as a sudden movement of trying to throw the mirror away set every aching wound alight. My head, shoulder, back legs, and even one I hadn't felt on my front right hoof seared as I collapsed down shivering. Minstrel moved quickly, his strong, firm hooves holding me in place to prevent further injury. Already, my eyes were shedding tears. I had seen... him. Above those matching horrific eyes, I now bore the same scar running from behind my left ear to just above my eye. Red and welted against my muddy green coat, it stood out as a swollen line of both pain and unpleasant memory. The knowledge of my head being permanently marked paled in comparison to that I looked like him.
Whoa there! Just stay still. You ain't ready to go all thrash around like that just yet, young buck. It'll probably fade in time when your coat grows back a little and the skin heals. But that there just wasn't any reaction to a pretty nasty scar now. Or was it?
I shook my head, wincing as that baleful line linking me to him throbbed, shaking tears across the couch beneath me.
Well, you rest here now, Murky number 7. I get the feeling there's issues here I'm not seeing. But don't you worry, you're safe here.
1,000 questions were vying for attention. One after the other, they wanted to explode forth. But through the pain, through the mental scarring and above all else, there was only one. Where am I? Am I free? Did I get out? Doc Minstrel raised an eyebrow, letting me go.
I did ever thought you was a slave. You running from Red Eye.
Am I free? Please, it's taken all my life. It was a big to more than just a stallion. It was to every pony. To my life. To the goddesses on their stars above, and to every bit of fate I had ever been through. Dr. Minstrel settled forward, resting his hoof on my back once again. For a second, every worry in my mind rose up. What if I had been dragged back inside Philly? What if this was just Protégé's personal physician he had mentioned? The answer felt like it took 1,000 years to arrive. My heart in my mouth as I saw him take a breath.
We're miles from old Philly, little buck. Don't you worry. You made it just far enough.
He paused, a smile slowly coming across his face as he rubbed my back and got up.
You're free at last, little slave.
Doc Minstrel wasn't gone long, just enough to fetch a small tray bearing a mug of water and a wet flannel. Trotting in, carefully balancing the tray on his back, he set it down in front of me. I was quite simply too flabbergasted to even notice. 3? Was I 3? My mind struggled to comprehend it. Just the sheer scale of being told. Well, that. Even as I felt him lift the wet flannel onto my head, I barely even registered the sharp pains at first. I just sat there and stared without a sound. Alright, perhaps I squeaked at the cold shock. No more than a yelp. Maybe a wince too. But no squealing. I was getting better.
Now, I imagine you got yourself a fine lot to think about. Lifelong slave to this? Big shift to go into the wasteland, you know. So tell me, how'd you even get here? Escaping Philadelphia isn't exactly easy.
I'd been dreading this. While he had fetched water in a cloth, I simply sat feeling stunned. Minstrel had left my saddlebag near the couch, and after a few false starts, I had dragged my journal across. It was safe. It was still with me. Small marks from where shrapnel had dug into the cover littered the front. It might have felt violating, seeing such a treasured belonging marked like that, but it had always been frayed and well worn, and for all I knew, it could have just saved my life by stopping them. Sitting sadly and quietly, flicking through the pages, I struggled to really come to terms. 3. Year after year of servitude, master after master, one torture to the next. Scars, whips, and broken wings. Tears, blood, and sweat every unceasing day. 3. Less than a week ago, I'd been shown the truth by the stable dweller. I had gone against my masters, launched a failed attempt to escape that almost claimed my life, and been through a multitude of horrors that grew every time into that one last moment. Could it really be? I scarcely wanted to believe it. One last rush. Glimmerlight and Brimstone by my side only...
Hey, kid!
I blinked back to the present, seeing Minstrel's old face looking at me.
You alright there?
I...
Take it as slow as you want. That kind of injury ain't gonna leave you too capable for a while. Now, just settle back, and tell me what happened. How'd you escape? Mighty impressive that you managed it.
Sighing, I rubbed my sore temples and glanced at the window, into the fuzzy light that revealed nothing outside. I don't know if I remember too well. It's just all one big blur, like time running too fast. Sound, my friends. Oh, goddesses. I don't know what happened to my friends. Panic was gripping me. I'd fallen, but Glimmer and Brim, where were they? Why hadn't Minstrel mentioned them? Had they...
Well, when my assistant Sonny found you, you was the only one in the area. She was out taking a look around the Philadelphia ruins to try and get me a new spark generator battery when she saw you poking out the rubble. Weren't no one else there.
Shivering, I tried to remember. Any little detail, anything to help. Maybe I could retrace my steps, find them again. Maybe they had just gotten away, thinking I was dead. Oh no. I don't remember very much at all, sir.
Now, don't you go sir me. I go by Minstrel. And I hear you using goddesses there. Mighty long time since I heard any pony talking about that stuff. Do wonder where you got that from. Now look, I wouldn't say you've quite got amnesia. You remember enough. Do you remember their names?
I slowly nodded.
Good. I think you've just been shaken by the whole experience. Taking time to digest it. We'll get it out of you, bit by bit. That's what the good doc does. What was the last thing you remember, little Murk?
Drawing breath slowly, I closed my eyes, but it wouldn't appear. Just blurred images, and some memories that were much too far back. Eventually, I began flicking through my journal, memory by memory. From little Pip soaring above me, to Brimstone standing guard over Glimmerlight. One by one, memories formed, solidified, and began to return. Picking up my charcoal stick, I knew how I would remember better. Lowering my head, I began to draw, allowing my subconscious to take over, lines sweeping back and forth, ignoring the pains it caused in my head. Shapes formed without even meaning to. I felt it flow from me. The emotion that no injury could ever take away from erupting into my work. A great circular doorway, beaming with light before 3 ponies. We were in a stable. The Steel Rangers attacked Red Eye's army, so we were going to take the chance. The 3 ponies were galloping, charging into the light towards the... wasteland outside. As one, Brimstone, Glimmerlight, and myself hopped over the metal rung of the door and charged towards freedom. We should have known they'd be watching the entrance. Our gallop was brought to an almost immediate halt by the scene ahead of us. The slavers were, for the most part, utterly devastated. The ground was littered with the wreckage of exploded wagons. Their steel bars bent and warped around flipped running bases. The stronger winds kicking up were sweeping loose cloth, torn barding, and indeed, even the bloody specks of dust into a small, but foul dust storm across the plains around the hillside. Equipment was strewn around the corpses of any who had resisted, or what was left of them. Steel Ranger weaponry left little in its wake. Worse, there were 3 Steel Rangers standing directly before us. The dark metal of power armor towered amidst the swirling dust above every one of the prisoners they had taken. I saw a very angry-looking Mosin lying against a rock, shrapnel wounds preventing him from moving. Each Steel Ranger bore massive weaponry. The first were dual long rifles similar to what I had seen Griffins carrying. The next, a combination of Gatling gun and seemingly a box of missiles. While the third had what seemed to be a small, portable piece of artillery across his or her back. Gender was impossible to tell. All 3 wore identical suits.
Halt! All looters will remain where they are.
The voice, male, held authority and force, booming from the external speakers in the helmet. I felt my hooves lock and stop on the spot, falling to the ground beside Glimmerlight. Brimstone stared grimly at them, snarling deeply as his hooves scraped the ground. I saw the 2 lighter-armed rangers brace themselves, their weapons swinging to face him. Behind me, I could still hear their comrades inside, battling with Barb's raiders. But it seemed out here, the rangers had won, and had the entrance completely in their favour. No pony could come out of such a thin exit into this firepower.
We're Slay's paladins!
Glimmerlight's voice rung true over the wind, albeit tired and shaky.
We mean no harm, and we own no loot. Just let us past and you'll never hear from us.
Apparently, she didn't find this a good time to mention her past allegiances. I began to feel my muscles clench in fear as their leader, bearing a huge cannon, looked away from her and curiously turned his head directly to me.
"'Tis a lie. The little one will step forward and relieve himself of the pipbuck fragment."
What? Sundow's pipbuck? I'd just begun to finally feel like it was truly mine. His life and the meanings he was giving. They weren't for being stored away. He wanted them told and known to some pony who found it.
It's just a non-functional fragment, Paladin. It's no use. I checked it myself. Just a piece of old scrap now.
"That's not for you to decide, slave. We have trained scribes who would restore it to glory and take its place among the records we guard. Now, pass it over immediately."
Glimmerlight scowled, muttering quietly out of the side of her mouth.
Philadelphian scribes couldn't tell a working pipbuck from the rods shoved up their asses.
"What was that?"
Look, it's a hunk of scrap. I'm gonna regret this. I am of the Buckling Cross Steel Rangers, Initiate Glimmerlight, daughter of Paladin Candyfloss. You have my word that the pipbuck will be returned to our records when we get out of here. I'm repairing it myself. I can quote the reg if you really want me to.
Standing beside her, I never realised how much I was shivering. Brimstone looked ready to charge them, however pointlessly, any second. Meanwhile, the Rangers had every gun trained on us, with an intensity I hadn't seen in the most loyal Griffins of Red Eye's army. This could go very badly, very quickly, and we didn't have much time if Barb's raiders won out inside and surged from behind us. Much to my surprise, however, the leader raised his weapons away and trotted forward, sliding the helmet from his head. A dark orange stallion of rough face and weathered eyes glared at Glimmerlight.
I know Candyfloss. She is a strong paladin, but the word of the Rangers matters little these days between brothers and sisters of the chapters. Traitor Steelhooves has declared his independence of us and taken many of the Rangers with him. The orders are in uproar, Buckland Cross included. Our own order has left for Stable 2 in Sweet Apple Acres initiate Glimmerlight. After we have extradited all remaining technology from here worth taking, we shall join them. I am afraid that I cannot trust such a rogue element as you to your word. However, as a matter of respect for your mother, I'll permit you to leave peacefully if you hand over the pip-buck. The mission is above all, Initiate. You know this.
Steelhooves went rogue?
Glimmerlight barely did more than whisper it. A look of odd longing and wishful nature in her eyes before shaking it free. The paladin ahead narrowed his eyes, stomping a rock so hard it cracked beneath him.
That is our only offer. Give up the pip-buck.
The last command was shouted at me. Offended that I even felt my limbs twitch to obey, I just staggered backwards, holding it closely while I trotted on 3 legs.
Now, slave, I will not ask again.
The weapons lowered, pointed directly at me.
Please don't.
My mouth barely staggered the words out, shaking my head and trying to work out how to just run away. I didn't want to give it up. The 2 Rangers flanking their leader advanced, thundering their hoofs on the ground as their large weight began moving towards me. Swerving, Brimstone leapt before them, growling and scraping the ground with his front hoof. I'd seen that look before when he had murdered an innocent slave. This was too close to kicking off. I'd have to give it over. It meant so much, but what we were after was so much more to risk a confrontation over sundials. The lead paladin's head exploded. Droplets of blood sprayed in all directions, coating his armor, his comrade's armor, and mixed with the spilt blood of the slavers below. With that, hell was unleashed. Sniper shots rained down from above, high-caliber rounds sparking off armor and cracking off rocks. The Steel Rangers reacted with speed that defied their weight and size, swinging their weaponry to the skies, to where I saw the Griffins loyal to Red Eye dive bomb from the clouds above. The sky in between quickly became a death zone as the Rangers unloaded their weapons indiscriminately. Rockets roared, cannons whirled, and screamed amidst the thick booms of the huge rifles. A crisscross of heavy firepower that sent Griffins whirling through the barrage on their rocketing descent. Screaming, I fell to the side, my ears assaulted and stinging under the overwhelming noise. Bullets pinged off of rocks around me, kicking up plumes of the earth or loose gravel mere feet away as the rounds ricocheted off Ranger armor towards us.
Murk, follow!
I'd only heard a fragment, but that was Brimstone's voice. Scrambling, I scampered from rock to rock, staying as low as possible. I saw the Rangers thundering away as little blue tinged grenades tumbled from the sky above. I hastily shielded my eyes from the magical blast. A dull thump rocked the ground. A rocket whooshed, and an explosion lit the sky among the flying V of Griffins. Spotting Brimstone and Glimmerlight running for the flanks of the battle, I saw Glimmer look back and scream for me to get out of the area. She must have thought I was behind her. I put my head down and ran, before skidding to a halt in shock. With a wet splatter, a shredded Griffin corpse collapsed ahead of me. The blood erupted from his chest on impact, spraying across the front of my body and face. Crying out loud, I turned and galloped directly away to the side, into the smoke, to avoid the remaining grounds that pulverized the fallen body.
Murky, this way! Follow my voice! I know you'll hear me!
The gunfire, downwash from griffin wings, and furious stomping of steel rangers was kicking up so much dust that I couldn't see anything. Corpses littered the ground around me. I passed the paladin that had been shot in the head, realizing I somehow wandered back towards the middle. Red-Eye slavers, the rangers, had taken prisoner crouched behind rocks, screaming to the skies. Doubling back, I again headed for where I'd last seen my friends through the dust.
Yeah! Go get him, Stern!
Kill those metal fuckers!
A huge female griffin swooped low, a large anti-machine rifle in her talons, and landed behind the rifle-wielding ranger. I had seen her before. This was Red-Eye's second in command. Stern. Possibly the most lethal griffin in Philadelphia. Whipping the rifle around with almost freakish speed, she planted it right against the ranger, and pulled the trigger. At that range, the armor stood no chance, even on steel rangers. I witnessed a small hole punched in one side, and half of a pony disgustingly blown out of the other. Propelled by the blast, the ranger's armor collapsed. Before it had hit the ground, Stern was gone again, taking to the skies with a powerful stroke of her wings before the remaining ranger could bring its weapon to bear. Banking into the wind, she rejoined the head of the griffin formation. Ponies and griffins died on all sides around me. Caught in the middle, I only now saw the truth of the wasteland. I had once believed that slaves suffered and slavers prospered. That was how it worked. But here, as I felt a wet crunch, my hoof recoiled as it landed atop the chest cavity of a dead slave. Eyes lidless and staring upwards. He lay torn open wide by a steel ranger weaponry, presumably as he had tried to run from the stable. Slaves killed by rangers. Slavers around me, falling from the sky as they were torn from the skies by even one remaining paladin. Nearby lay one of the proud warriors. Stern's work. Behind me, I knew there would be more, coming after either the raiders or rangers survived. Then, it would all begin again, with whoever won out here. No pony on any pony side, just one huge circle of violence and distrust. Barb hadn't been wrong. Staggering over the sharp rocks to the side of the road leading up to the stable door, I fell against one of the large boulders dotted around. I'd made it out of the melee itself, but I was still only meters away from it, crawling through clouds and keeping below rounds punching through the air. I could only hear snaps, gunshots, and screams, and more rangers charged from the stable, followed by the howl of raiders chasing them. This had just escalated. I had no sense of setting, no concept of clear lines of battle, or which side was winning. Just one huge mess of confused, sensory overload. I galloped for all I was worth, passing slavers trying to grab weapons around me, only to be torn apart while fighting back desperately. I saw raiders leaping on them, biting throats, and feverishly bucking. Rudimentary knives and gifted weaponry for the job was used on their masters. One raider, with blood pouring down one side of his face, saw me, screamed, and gave chase.
Come here, little buck. I'm gonna get ya.
Screaming, I ran, hearing his hooves clatter on the rocks behind as he grabbed a discarded dagger and gave chase. I couldn't see anything. Where was I going?
Murky! Murky!
Wait, left? Or was that right? I couldn't tell. I hadn't known battles would be this confusing. What if something just hit me? What if...
Gotcha!
Screaming in terror, I felt a raider leap on me from behind. His long strides had caught me far faster than I'd imagined, without seeing anything in the dust. I bucked with my right hoof, catching nothing. Briefly, I felt a struggle as I tried to get away, his mangy hide rubbing hideously against me while we fell, rolling one over the other down the shallow slope. With a wing-aching thud, he landed atop me. Looking behind me, I screamed again, and I saw the knife in his mouth descend and land clean. I had been shot before. The sheer shock had immobilized me. But this... I cried out, throwing my head backwards and howling into the air in agony when I felt the 4 inches of cold metal penetrate my left shoulder. And twist. My ears perked up, the sucking wet sound as the wound opened. My scream didn't stop. I howled, begged, and cried out as the weapon yanked out, leaving me to bleed. Thrashing on the floor, I tried to hold a hoof over the wound, crying in pain as I registered the feeling of a new, wet hole in my shoulder. The raider reared up, ducked as a griffin whipped overhead and licked the knife clean with a delightful giggle, watching me squirm and scream. Suddenly, he glanced around.
Ah, shit. You bleed out. Blood flows in the wasteland, little pony. Blood flows. I'll be back for you.
Without warning, he left, the reasoning only becoming clear as I felt the passing minor earthquake, to me, of a steel ranger galloping past into better cover. I simply lay there, flailing among the rocks, bleeding amidst it all, screaming for anyone, from Glimmerlight to little Pip, even my mother. I wasn't alone. A griffin was trying to clutch her lower body nearby after shrapnel had sliced across her belly. My throat was becoming hoarse from shouting, rough and sore. Already, I was feeling lightheaded.
Rangers, gather to the city! We shall bring them low in urban warfare!
Griffins! They're trying to retreat! Hound them!
It occurred to me that my hypersensitive hearing was picking up both sides' commands. The fear of being left alone to bleed out amongst the dead and dying began to filter in. I don't want it to be slow. By all the goddesses, I didn't want to be left here for that. It hurt so much. Then I was being pulled, roughly and without care. Whimpering and clutching my shoulder, I saw the trail of blood behind me on the rocks. The sight made me want to throw up. It wasn't a small amount either. Ahead of me, I saw a steel ranger firing in indiscriminate circles at a shadow that seemed to bounce around him. With sudden jerks, I saw the ranger flinch as the shadow passed by him, again and again. Barb. Feeling myself being dumped, I saw shapes around me. Whimpering pathetically, I tried to fight them off with my good hoof, to get up. The raiders had pulled me behind the rocks to gut me with that knife, or execute me with that pistol, or...
Mackie, it's me! Stop it! What are you?
Glimmer's voice stopped, as I felt more than saw her pay attention to my shoulder. Blood was flowing freely. I tried to reach for her.
Oh, fuck! Brim! He's hurt! They got him!
It won't kill him immediately. Get him in the wagon. Now!
Finally, my vision focused as I saw Glimmerlight bent over me, shielding me with herself, lifting me towards something. Wait, Mosa's armory wagon! The thick metal-plated wagon lay on its side. I could see the huge figure of Brimstone, unmistakable by silhouette even through thick vision-obscuring conditions, heaving and lifting the massive wagon by his own strength. Creaking, the old Fun Farm circus trailer finally lurched back onto its wheels. Behind Brimstone, a figure began running directly for him, a bayoneted rifle held in mouth.
Brim! Behind you!
My scream, pitching to the point my voice broke, caught even Glimmerlight off guard, twisting off me as she too saw the furious charging figure of a slaver, trying to prevent our escape. His gas mask fallen to dangle from his neck. Slipping his assault rifle from his back, Brim flipped it into the air, caught the barrel in his mouth, and swung it hard. The butt connected solidly with the slaver's own gun, knocking it clean from his filthy mouth, along with a few yellow teeth. The return stroke snapped his head around, far too quickly to be healthy, landing the slaver face down at an awkward angle. Quite dead. Brimstone looked at the rifle in his mouth, now snapped in two from the impact, before spitting it away.
Unbreakable, eh? Right, you vodka-heaving old bastard.
Crying out in pain as Glimmerlight pulled me into the wagon, I flopped onto the floor. I could feel her jump in behind me, while Brimstone hooked himself to the front. I saw puncture marks kick through the metal sides of the wagon. Some penetrated, missing us by scant inches. Glimmerlight yanked me backwards away from it and towards the back. I tried to do it myself, but my hooves were like lead, barely able to function from the exertion. Brimstone bellowed back from the front.
Hold on! They're going to gun for us as much as any ranger, so we'll use the scraps as armored cover. They have bigger problems than some escaping slaves, but if we're near them, then they have a bigger threat. Hold on!
Stuck in the back, I screamed again as I tried and failed to hold the blood in. Why couldn't I stop it? I didn't want to lose my blood. How would I get it back? I felt dizzy, thinking stupid thoughts. Glimmer.
Hush, Murky. Let me have a look around here.
With a jerk, the entire wagon began moving at a rate far faster than it ever was designed for. Items fell from shelves as Brimstone dragged it over the rough terrain. Doing her best, Glimmerlight pulled the shutters with her magic and dragged over a box bearing the same symbols as my saddlebag.
Drink up! Oh, Murky, I'm so sorry!
As I felt the purple liquid held to my mouth, the entire battle seemed to drain away into the background, replaced only with occasional snapshots of griffins on the retreating of the rangers. Evidently, their armor let them keep pace as I felt them gallop all around us. But I couldn't concentrate on them for long. It hurt so much. Please stop it hurting. Glimmerlight simply held me as we put our trust in Brimstone Blitz's determination. Even as I felt the healing potion aid the pain and began to stem the bleeding, I just still cried at the memory of the raider attack. I hadn't even purposely realized how afraid I was. The things that had happened out here, in the wasteland. In many ways, although I felt ashamed at how I looked like this, I kept thinking how much safer I was with them. Sniffling, I pushed my head towards Glimmerlight's shoulder, crying it out. Into her shoulder, I finished the last sketchy lines of her own front legs curled around me. Sniffling, I sat back from my sketch, seeing Doc Minstrel cast a glance down. The couch now held a few drawings that had helped me remember. Minstrel had been a good listener.
Well, that'd explain the wound you had on your shoulder there, Murk.
His voice was slow, watching me glance at the bandages on my shoulder. There were still red marks of blood seeping through them. Remembering the feeling of the weapon puncturing my flesh, I shivered.
That Glim girl probably saved your life with that healing potion to stem the bleeding. Kill off infection too. Them raiders are filthy weapons, as good as any poison, really if untreated. Still, a brave move you folks did to make your escape. Stealing their wagon. Reminds me of my younger days in the wastes.
I listened to him only slightly, sighing as I glanced back at Glimmerlight and myself in the sketch. Where were my friends? I hadn't probably felt like I missed some pony since my mother. But now, they were out there, somewhere without me. Did they escape? Were they taken back? Brimstone had he disappeared and... Wincing, my hoof gently went to my head. With a groan, I settled back down, apparently furrowing my brow in concern with enough to hurt that scar. Dr. Minstrel patted my shoulder, getting up.
You've had a rough time, but don't try to force it. A little memory fuzziness isn't entirely uncommon with traumatic head injuries. Really, aside from a little scarring, give yourself a bit longer for the healing potions to work and stay safe for a while and you should be right as rain.
If only I shared that. The mirror sat across the church now, but every glance, every half-hearted look only reminded me of the horrible shared features. I wasn't going to be his. No matter what he said or what happened.
Now, look, that's only one of your problems. You're badly malnourished. How much have you had to eat in the last week?
Half a can of beans, a small apple stew, and some bits of oatmeal. Minstrel seemed to stop, his mouth hanging open as if expecting me to go on. Eventually, I saw his eyes glance down to my stomach before tutting and shaking his head.
Well, we better get something in you. Healing process works better on a stomach that isn't eating itself out of hunger. No wonder you're so small, if you didn't get those nutrients while growing up. Let's get you up and over to the table.
He moved alongside me, wrapping hooves across my torso and nodding ready. Taking a few breaths, I edged off the side, dropping my 2 left hooves to the ground and... Oh. The light seemed to blur in the air, my vision becoming blurry and indistinct. The scar ached, feeling like my skull was shifting as my body took responsibility for my balance once again. Falling against Doc Minstrel, I let him support my weight until the moment passed. I saw him pick up my journal for me.
Now, that's it. Won't be easy for a few minutes. Just trot it off. Gently does it.
Step after hesitant, limping step, I moved across the room. Little sound emerged from outside. Just the wind and the banging of shutters on his home. Every window was covered for warmth. The 10-foot journey to a cushion on the floor felt like I had to run for the wall all over again, and I gratefully sat back on my haunches to lean on the table to breathe. I don't feel well.
'Cause you got nothing in you to sustain activity, little Murk. Your stomach's trying to digest stuff that ain't there. Just sit there a second.
He left towards a musty old kitchen down the corridor of the house. Left alone, I pondered, looking around. Doc Minstrel was fairly well off. The home was cozy, seemingly secure, and somewhat comfortable. Probably why I hadn't yet properly grasped my freedom was the lack of a view outside. My thoughts drifted to glimmer and brim again, but no answers could come of it. Maybe when I began to remember more of what happened? I heard Minstrel approaching again. A plate of dry-looking biscuits beside stale fruit was laid before me. I hadn't expected much. The wasteland was never going to be easy for food, but at least it was better than the vomit-inducing slimy oatmeal Whiplash had fed me. Sitting opposite me, Minstrel smiled gently. I sat and stared back, glancing back at the food every so often.
Is something wrong, Murk?
My voice faltered. I realized I'd been waiting for him to permit me to eat. Treating him as a master. It took me some effort to bite down the wave of upsetting feelings that caused and get to the food before me. No, nothing's wrong. Minstrel didn't sound convinced, nodding after a few seconds. Clearly, he was rather perceptive of mental states.
You have to learn to be your own buck, Murk. Out here, no pony's gonna tell you what you need to do to survive all the time.
It's hard. I don't even know how. Even my friends, I just follow, usually. All my life. Master and slave. Command and follow. But now, I don't know what I should do. I just kinda thought it'd all come to me.
Don't worry for now. We'll come back to that. Just eat.
Without much hesitation, I dug in. I felt my shrunken stomach bulge a little with the amount. Still less than a normal pony would feel satiated with, I imagined, while listening to Minstrel telling me of himself. Apparently, he made a living by selling things he found in the ruins of Philadelphia, using battles between Red Eye and the Rangers as cover to sneak in and out. These days, his assistant Sonny did the job far more often. Between the two of them, they could fix things up to sell for a higher price. The goal, however, was to eventually sell enough to relocate off towards the central waste where it was much safer. Apparently, that wouldn't be too long from now. He seemed hopeful. To tell the truth, though, I only barely listened. My eyes were focused either on the food or on the windows that I kept trying to imagine the expansive wasteland behind. What would be the first thing I would see? The great valleys that led towards Manhattan? An old town, safe to wander in? But really, it was fear that drove me to think and worry to distraction. The master could be spreading out to hunt for me. Those shackles and collars of his clinking at his side ready to... I needed to get going. I can't wait around here too long. Red Eye might come back for me, or my master. Minstrel sighed, reaching across to my good shoulder again.
You don't have a master now, Murk. I think you're going to have to take some time to get used to that. Where do you think you'll go?
My mouth opened, but no words came out. I didn't know. Where was I supposed to go? Which direction? What was my goal? Sickeningly, I felt part of my mind wish some pony would tell me what to do. Fighting the revulsion, I just screwed my eyes shut, lowering my head.
Well, gather your thoughts. Whether it's to hunt for your friends or whatever, but you're safe here. Red Eye's cronies never come here. Too off the beaten track, if you get me. Let's just take our time, get you ready to move, and help you remember just what happened before good old Sunny found you. Alright? Best wait till Sunny is back anyways. She might know something about your friends.
Briefly, my mind rebelled that I was only nodding because he had told me what to do. Sniffing, I pulled across my journal from where he had left it. I don't want to be a slave, but I can't stop thinking about it.
Just take your time and draw, Murk. There's no rush. I'm not gonna whip you for not doing something immediately.
His voice was calming, allowing me to sniff sharply and open a new page. We were escaping in the wagon. Thick black lines appeared, the outline of the wagon hurtling under Brimstone's power. The steely look of determination tinged with fury on his face. Moving aside, I began drawing other shapes around us. In the air, rangers and griffins. The rangers ignored us, but the griffins started dropping bombs and mines. With strong sudden draws of charcoal, the explosion filled the ground in front of the wagon, casting dirt up into the air that pelted the top of Mosen's mobile armory. Ducking at the painful sound, I peeked through my hoofs to see Glimmerlight opening fire with every rifle and pistol she could find within the wagon. Either through one of the slit windows or by leaning out the door, she tried to force off the griffins before they could line up their throws. She was trained, aimed properly, and seemed pretty cool under fire, but the wagon was being hurled every which way under Brimstone's steam that ruined her aim. We hit a bump so large, I felt all four of my hooves leave the floor before clattering down. My shoulder ached, but the wound had clotted over for now after 2 healing potions and a thick wad of bandage.
Hey, Brim, can you get us off the main road? They might leave us alone if we disappear now.
There was no reply. The cacophony of sound was beginning to give me a headache. Rangers thundering down the road around us was stopping every few seconds to dissuade the griffins with their heavy weaponry. The run from the stable had cost them one more armoured warrior. But now that we were within the ruins of Philadelphia, the urban environment was beginning to give them a chance. Already, the crowd of them around us had gradually passed away to take up positions inside ruined homes or warehouses. Glimmerlight fell back suddenly with a cry of shock. Gasping, I threw myself to her, searching for the wound. What was I meant to do for gunshots? She gently pushed me away, struggling to keep her balance in the madly bucking trailer.
It's alright, Murky. I'm fine. Just around next to me. A bit of a surprise. Got any alcohol?
Huh?
None of Mosen's vodka around? Ah, shit. I usually aim better with a shot or two in me. Brim, I said could we... Whoa!
Echoing her sentiment, I clung to the workbench as the wagon turned sharp to the right, reeling up on 2 wheels and struck a wall with a metallic crash that stripped some plates of armour entirely off. We were flung around, the world twisting up before it all landed again with a bone-shaking slam. Various empty firearms scattered out of the open door behind us to tumble onto the road. The little thief inside me couldn't help but feel a wince of pain at such a waste of potential items to acquire once we got away. Through the windows, I saw nothing but brickwork and shadows. We were in an alleyway. Slipping my goggles over my eyes, I felt safer from bullets and wasn't about to argue the harsher rules of reality. I dared to poke my head up to a window slit, seeing no griffins above us. Just the 2 thin walls of the alleyway between a pair of huge buildings. I think they're gone. Popping her head out of the front window, I saw Glimmer lean down to Brimstone's torn ear.
Next time, are you going to warn me before you decide to throw us around like that?
Brimstone's voice seemed all the more deadpan amidst his clear concentration and focus.
Aye, I figured you were used to being bucked about hard.
What? Why you... Ugh!
She slammed the window slit shut and turned back to me, fuming for a few seconds with crossed legs, before shaking her head and uttering a small laugh.
I swear, someday if I ever grow up, I'll look back and cringe. You promised to remind me to never become an old cynical bastard like him, Murky.
At the moment, I was still shivering and holding onto the workbench leg, as though it would protect me from every horrible thing in Equestria. Chuckling, she gently eased me from it. Well, perhaps she had a little difficulty. That table leg felt safe. I promise, I think... Stammering, I found myself fighting all the emotions in my head. Why couldn't I handle emotions like any pony else? Fear of being caught or dying, mixed with an elation at our escape attempt, and that we were outside the wall. My eyes felt like they had run dry minutes ago, while I had been lying wounded. My shoulder still gave me a sickening feeling every time I moved it. I had seen ponies receive so much worse, but one stab had broken my determination into a blabbering wreck. I didn't feel brave like those who could take an injury and keep going. Like Brimstone. How would I even manage out here? My thoughts were pushed away when I felt a rusty old revolver and what looked like a cut-down combat rifle thrust at me by Glimmer.
Here, keep yourself occupied. We'll need those before this is out. Get them loaded up for me. I'll see if we can find something for you too.
Her voice was calmer, more stoic than before. Looking at her pulling the same bolt action she had in the stable apart to check something, I saw every inch the grim training that Ranger initiates must have had to go through. Every motion mechanical, like their suits, even when not in them or not intended to ever wear them. Still fighting for balance, and occasionally feeling the wagon grind against the wall, I began to pick up the guns to load. And in the process, discovering precisely why I'd only ever seen unicorns carry revolvers. We had a straight run. This alleyway was almost fully protected from aerial strikes, and once we were past the exit into the next road, we'd be gone. It was the only way out of the alley, so no ambushes.
Here, Murky, try this out.
Her magic floated across a small pistol. I had long since checked for battle saddles, that I bit into. The grip felt small enough for my mouth, and the trigger thick and easy to find. The, thing that held bullets seemed to be full already.
You've got 7 rounds in there, Murky. Tongue back for safety. Forward to fire. Recoil should be low, I think.
You think? I muttered around the weapon. Only a small chance of knocking one of my teeth out then? I spat it out to hang around my neck on its cord before going back to my work on her guns. Personally, I think I just prefer...
A battle saddle. We know.
Nonplussed, I continued. No, I mean like mines. Like, to, run away, you see. I could drop them behind me or put them places where I knew some pony was going to come out of. Glimmerlight stopped where she was, staring at me as though I had just shot her by accident.
Somewhere you knew some pony was going to come out. Shit!
Dropping the long-barreled pistol at her hooves, she leapt to the slit window at the front.
Brim, the alleyway is mine!
She was seconds too late. Brimstone must have leapt over it by sheer chance. But we had not. Never had my world accelerated so fast. I lost all hearing, blasted into a ringing oblivion, as I felt the armoured floor of the wagon catapult up underneath me, amidst a roaring explosion that flared through every window. Briefly, I became weightless within a wagon that had been blown vertically up and over, rolling end over end. I felt my mouth open, screaming as I impacted from wall to wall, unknowing of which way was up or down. The workbench collided with my ribs before a final crunch hurled me away. I impacted on something, tumbling over or through it. Everything turned red. Pain flooded every joint and every muscle when I landed in a heap, rolling multiple times to a halt on... dirt? Groaning, I opened my eyes onto a scene of devastation. The red was not my vision being lost. It was Philadelphia in general. The wagon had been thrown so hard, I had been sent flying out of the door. The armoured transport's underside was bent and shattered around an odd V-shape of design, welded on. I tried to move, before finding just why that was such a mistake. Nothing seemed to hurt badly, but I felt bruised all over and shivery. My shoulder bandage was turning red again. I could feel the blood trickling under it. Gradually, sound returned like the roaring of hard rain, and I tried to crawl back towards the wagon. I could see Brimstone thrown with the wagon, bucking the harness off of himself. His hide bore several red spots below the dirt, and I saw him pull a small shard of metal from his torso with a grunt. Glimmerlight was flopped over the door, holding her head. Her nose was bleeding, but she seemed unharmed.
Murky, get into cover, quickly!
Doing the best I could, I dragged myself towards the burning wagon. Brimstone pulled Glimmerlight down behind it, while she turned to regain her senses. Around me, I saw little plumes of dirt kicked up. A flutter. Many flutters. Griffins. There were half a dozen above us, circling and leaping roof to roof into firing positions. Finding strength born of lethal danger, I limped and staggered to fall into cover beside Brimstone and Glimmerlight. The big raider had grabbed a combat rifle and was letting rattling shots off from his mouth to dissuade the griffins from coming any closer. They didn't know he likely couldn't hit them, even at 10 feet. I cowered behind the wagon, feeling the heat of the flames on the side of my face. What was I meant to do? I didn't know and...
Get this in your mouth, and keep your heads down.
Brimstone shoved the small pistol from around my neck almost directly into my mouth. Shivering, I tried. I really did. But every impact on our hiding spot from the Griffin snipers made me want to cry and curl up under the nearest object. I couldn't do this. Closing my eyes, I heard Brimstone curse as he saw me fall down and cover my ears, simply crying away instead of helping like I should. I tried to blank my mind. Imagine everything is nice again. Around me, I saw this warehouse estate as bustling. There were ponies laughing as they worked, knowing they were safe. Yes, safe. I'd go and find the ponies I liked and be safe. Like that ice cream cart over there that totally wasn't a ruined shell now. Or that cafe that didn't have a Pegasus Sky Chariot crash through the front door. I just wanted things to be better. Not stuck in the middle of a failing escape attempt about to be shot. I didn't want to be shot again. Every part of my mind was focused on trying to fool myself into thinking I wasn't really where I was. That I was back on the rock farm. Or back in even old Equestria to just get away from it. The slave in my mind was screaming, cursing, and slapping my face to get back in line. If I ran out and gave up, they'd take me back. They only shot at Brim and Glimmer because they were fighting back. Gunfights were too much. I just wanted to be better. The voice, louder than any sound in my messed up subconscious. The great DJ. I checked my pip bark, but I couldn't be sure. Was I hearing his voice at the wonderful right time, or just remembering? The obstacles in our path can be overcome if we just work together. So, don't abandon those you care about, you hear? Beside me, I saw Glimmer reel back as a ricochet skiffed her neck, replacing the cut she had healed from the fight in the stable. I saw the blood running from Brimstone's shrapnel wound. I was abandoning them to fight on my behalf. Only by sticking together can we truly save lives and make ourselves better. No matter what horrors we all must share along the way. That we must share. Protege told me that I didn't have the mindset or determination to escape Philadelphia. I'd found others to help me replace it with their own strength. But now, I was taking that for granted, hiding while they risked danger. How many times did I draw myself, succeeding at escaping now? Time to make it a reality. I picked up the pistol again, clambering up and throwing my goggles onto my head after they had steamed up from my tears. I was still crying, but I didn't care. That wouldn't ever stop. Pulling my weight up on my good hoof, I cast a glance around at the buildings that were opening fire on us. Celestia, give me the strength to do this. Aiming at the first one I saw, my tongue pulled the trigger. In the space of that single shot, past the concussive pain in my ears, I felt the fear fade. A strand of concrete exploded into pieces 3 feet to the right of the griffin, but I saw her duck because of it. I could do this! Turning my head, I aimed for where I heard the sizzle of an energy weapon and followed the contrail of red to the source. 2 squeezes. 2 loud bangs that hurt my head. They both missed, but I saw Glimmerlight given a chance to think, aim, and fire the longbolt action rifle accurately enough to snap the griffin back from her perch. Whether by injury or just some armor impact was unknown. Together, I fought with them. I fought to defend. To help them. I fought for our freedom, with friends, and I felt stronger than I ever had for aiding in that moment. Cover me! The voice wasn't Brimstone or Glimmerlight. It was a griffin. I screamed for them to get down before the griffins unleashed everything they had at us. My ears, through the noise, picked up a flutter of wings. They were on the move to outflank us and... Ugh! A bullet pinged in from the side of the wagon, rebounding just in front of my eyes. Brimstone shoved me below the wreckage, firing a burst at the griffin who had snuck around under their cover. Behind us, I could hear 3 more flying for the alleyway to get behind us. Soon, my help or not, would be overwhelmed.
Fucking chicken's not wanting to come down and tussle hooves with me. I hate griffins.
Brimstone complained as he dumped his last rounds at them and dropped the rifle with a snarl.
To be fair, they don't have hooves, Brim.
Glimmerlight's humour was forced through clenched teeth. The last round sprung from her rifle. There were others on the ground somewhere, but in the wreckage, it was all too dirt-covered and scattered to identify what rounds were for which gun in time. I had a few shots left, but my participation was hardly stellar, as spirited as I felt. We're going to die, aren't we? I felt myself asking through my wet eyes to Glimmer, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. She sighed, looking around the rooftops, before grinning and pulling an apple-shaped grenade from the armory wagon. Brimstone shook his head disapprovingly.
Grenades aren't known for taking care of flying enemies too well, Glim.
Glimmerlight's grin only widened and turned almost crazed as she raised a want it need it spell orb up alongside the grenade. Brimstone's eyebrows raised.
Well now, that's just playing dirty.
The spell orb flickered toward her horn, drawn in shades by rubbing my hoof over it, creating the look of magic as best as I could. She had saved us. My sketch, showing her originality in putting 2 elements together. My charcoal curved around her almost gleeful eyes as a nearly wicked plan entered her mind. Minstrel watched from beside me, carefully listening as I recounted what I could. How we had averted our eyes and galloped onwards into the building to seek cover from above. Stopping, I just looked down at her face. Already, I was missing that casually crazed mindset of hers.
She mean a lot to you, kid?
Sniffling, I sat back and nodded. I only met her less than a day ago. Glimmerlight was the first pony to ever hug me that wasn't my mother. She just cares so much. Even if she is quite, Blushing, I looked away, prompting Minstrel to chuckle and pick up my empty plate between his hooves and settle it on an old tray.
Yes, I quite got the impression she's an mare who intends to think, long-term very much, from how you spoke, in all sense of the word. Me? I think I'm happier to settle, or at least I hope to soon.
My head was lowered, as it often naturally fell to, while turning to watch him place a tray on a nearby table out of the way. You're settling with Sonny? Minstrel laughed.
Sonny? Huh. Oh no, my friend. She's my number 1 assistant, protector and friend, but she's also a good 20 years younger. No, I refer to my blessed wife, Corel Sonata.
He smiled wistfully towards a dresser as he spoke, sighing happily. I found myself grinning slightly. Her name was beautiful. Following his gaze, I saw a picture frame atop the polished wood. Fighting tired limbs, determined to prove that I had some ability to push myself, I staggered and limped over to it alongside him. It was an old and sepia-toned picture showing an older mare, staring at this very same window dresser and nervously trying to hide her face, to little avail. The photo had caught that loving smirk perfectly. Something about her reminded me about the mysterious mare, if she had been a lot older. That same rounded face and oddly fragile expression remained. Her cutie mark was hidden under the plain white dress, which even in sepia seemed to light up the room around her, reflecting the sun over the farming fields behind and... Wait. Minstrel?
Yes, Murk?
This is a pre-war picture. Minstrel picked up the frame between his front hooves. Looking deep into the image, he slightly chuckled, setting it back down.
Show me a camera that works, and I'll find one of her, Murk. I miss her. I'd do anything to get Sonny and myself enough caps to relocate back to her. But this mare's eyes reminded me of my dearest. In this world, sometimes that's all you get when you don't know if you'll see him again.
His eyes followed mine when I looked back at it, turning the picture to again look at her.
It's partly why I envy you, Murk. You can create your own memories. That's a rare talent, you know. Many might draw, but you seem to do it from the heart. Keep up with that. Memories matter. They have great power to affect us, you know.
Images of the mare and I, etched in charcoal, came to mind. I flicked the journal back to her, allowing Minstrel to see. I remembered Glimmerlight's special talent to show her own past. Those happy times that kept her going. Even the remnants of memory left in the dark stable. Yeah, I do know. Gently placing my hoof upon my first ever image of the mare, I silently promised myself that the moment I was properly safe and free, my promise to her would be fulfilled. One picture to remember her, even if it wasn't perfect. It would be enough. Gradually, my shock from waking outside of Philadelphia was beginning to lessen. True, the element of freedom in my mind wouldn't properly hit until I could look back and not see the baleful slave city in my field of view. Using binoculars just to be sure, possibly a telescope. Doc Minstrel had instructed me to stay put and just rest until I felt better. In the meantime, I had taken to checking over all my belongings his assistant had brought back with her. My pip-buck, to my great pleasure, was still with me, as was my fleece and saddlebag, along with, obviously, my journal. Within my saddlebag, I found my goggles and various items taken from the stable. My newly acquired pistol was gone. A reasonable precaution, I guessed. Unfolding it, I intended to put my fleece back on, but shuddered to a stop when I noticed the thick bloodstains coating the wool right through around the shoulder. The pain still lingered. If I let my thoughts wander, I could see fleeting images of a frothing, raged, and bloodthirsty raider holding me down to sink a knife into me. During the escape, I'd had too much on my mind to think about it, even while running injured or fighting for my life. But now in the downtime, it all just came back. It wasn't my only injury, apparently. I had been half buried in the rubble of a house after all. I could feel another wad of bandage around my torso, and my front right leg held a dressing where my pip-buck was normally tied around. With a glance, I saw the pip-buck bore new scars, making it even more like a hunk of scrap metal than it already had been. Yet, with a tap to one of the chunky buttons to turn on the radio, I was surprised to find it still worked. Stabletech knew how to build them, that was for sure. Nervous of offending Minstrel with noise, I immediately turned it off, cutting the DJ's broadcast short.
Who's to say the stable dweller won't help all them slaves when she gets back?
Apologising internally, I set it down, even if the words did lift my spirits. Little Pip was coming back? Perhaps I could meet her on the road and we could go find my friends together. Yes! Already, my mind was trawling what I should draw in advance as a gift to her. If I could make her like me. I had to fight the urge to bat my head to purge those distracting thoughts. Telling myself, crush later, Murky, recovery now. Sitting back on my haunches and holding my hoof up, I tried to shift the bandages a little. Before any travel on my newly decided objective, I needed to know what had happened to my leg.
Wouldn't say that's too advisable. Shrapnel, usually the kind you'd find from mines, got embedded in there. Pretty sure I got rid of it, but it's an open wound. Removing the dressing before it's healed would just hurt a hell of a lot, and expose it to every bit of infection in the air.
Snapping my other hoof away like a foal caught near the cookie jar, I glanced over at Minstrel entering the room.
I took a little look from up top of the house. It looks like Sonny will be back within the hour if my eyes work right these days.
Could I see?
No. Too many particles in the air. Fallout and dirt on the wind for someone injured like you are. Just you stay down here. Now, I thought I might get to know you a little. That slave mindset is awfully worrying to some pony, about to go out into the waste to find his friends. You picked up a gun once, yeah, but as much as I hate to admit it, such a thing is all too common a requirement out here. There comes a time when even myself, the physician, had to fight to protect the ones he loved. Never would have thought I'd have to do that back in the stable.
Briefly, my mind stopped and focused entirely on him. You came from a stable? Minstrel beckoned me to follow. Unsteadily, I trotted after him into the corridor of the house. Ahead of me, I could see the front door, thick and wooden. I was led through beige carpets and exquisite woodwork furniture to a back room. There was a mirror on my left side, and with one glance, I whimpered and moved on with my eyes firmly shut. Within there was an odd mixture of belongings, ranging from scrap items in despair to fully functional tools that I had seen in the stable. In the corner sat an old instrument I had once heard called a lute. Hanging across a mannequin, I saw a bright blue and yellow jumpsuit. A number I couldn't identify written on the lapels. Armoured plates were sewn into it, or strapped on the torso and shoulders. Hung around the neck on a small chain lay a pip bark that chimed in a pale orange.
I'm an old stallion, Murk. Stables ain't as common as they used to be. I came out of mine when I was only 16. Only just got this little beauty.
He tapped the pip bark with a hoof, setting it swinging on a chain.
I don't need this stuff too much anymore. Always figured I'd give it to some pony who needed it. But I see you've already got your own. Perhaps I'll sell it to the next trader. Help pay for the supplies to take me home. Hell, I'd sell anything to get back to her again.
How long will that take? Wandering amongst the inventory of his house, Minstrel glanced back at me, that fading mane shifting in the thick air of the home. An eyebrow raised as he leaned on the mannequin.
Hopefully not long at all. Why'd you ask?
We could travel together. More is better than one, right? And we could... Oh. Minstrel had held up his hoof, shaking his head just before staring at me.
Don't think so. We're gonna be taking a lightweight run. Besides, you'll have other things to do.
He was right. My friends, little Pip, my mother even. I had so much of my own to do. My thoughts were broken as a tickling started in my throat. Panicking, I tried to reach for the nearest piece of furniture. A chair. I almost made it. The tickling became a burning as the great retching cough burst from my mouth, followed by an anguished cry as my head seared with pain, dizzying me and knocking me over. The chair toppled, collapsing on the ground beside me as I clutched my chest, quaking and trying to hold more in. Minstrel was beside me quickly, a hoof on my breast as he lowered his ear to my neck.
You're wheezing bad internally. I'm pretty good at patching folks up, but I ain't no proper physician. Asthma?
Weeping from the pain, feeling ragged and thin breathing from hot lungs, I lay my head on a hoof and whispered instead.
Rads in my lungs. Please. I need rat away soon.
Afraid I don't have any of that. Pretty variable stuff that most folks need. But I could mix a hot drink for that throat and...
Please. I need rat away.
Another cough interrupted me just as I tried to rise, making me retch and stay hunched over, fighting the urge to scream as the patched wood in my skull pounded and seemed to grind the pain into me.
I'm sorry, Murk. Don't have any. Best bet is to get you on your hooves and out there soon enough. Once Sonny's back, I'll see if she can't take a quick trip to the traders and round up some.
Helping me back up, my breathing became heavy as the episode died down. Breathing became a little easier inside, with apparently less rads in the air. I'm sorry, Minstrel. I haven't even thanked you for what you've done with me yet. I'm not sure what I can offer in return to match. Well, all of this. Hoisting my hoof over his neck, he held on to me to lead me back through, shaking his head as he went.
Think not of it. Sometimes, a good act can return itself much better in the long term. And now come on, time we continued helping you. Keep your mind at this illness. Feeling up to it?
Nodding, I made my way back through with his help. Yet, as we passed by the door to his storage room, I cast a glance back at the mannequin. So, that's what stable dwellers wore to protect themselves. Battle barding. She had a scoped revolver too, according to Glimmerlight. What had she called it again? My memory failed me, but remembering her form from the pit, contrary to what Glimmer might claim, I did remember more than just certain bits of said form. I mentally dressed her up. Finally, a little image of what my beloved legend looked like. I'd have to draw it later. But for now, taking a new page in the main room, I sat and struggled to remember.
We... Don't strain yourself there. Just let it flow. That's how you draw, ain't it?
Like it all just comes from my soul itself.
How very poetic. You're a little more intelligent than you look.
Ceasing my thoughts, I glanced sideways with narrowed eyes to catch him chuckling.
No offense, man, of course. What I mean is, you can't read or write. You've not been taught any real math or a lot of standard life skills, but you ain't stupid. You just weren't ever told how. Free from slavery, you could be some pony better than you are, you know.
Somehow, some way, that reassured a large part of my ever-worrying mind to finally settle and smoothly think back. We were on the run, on hooves. That I remember, but they stopped us a lot of times, chasing us. Shaking, I lowered the charcoal, letting it almost control itself. Bold lines crushing everything into a thin alleyway. It was an alleyway. Spurred by my subconscious drawing, I began to fill in the details. A side-on shot of all three of us, galloping forward. Brimstone at the lead, grim and determined with a huge muscular stride to his gallop. Behind him, Glimmerlight with her short mane blowing in the wind. That tore down the thin corridor directly into our faces. I was lagging, my shoulder flaring in pain with every step, and my short gait failing to keep up with my larger friends. Above us, I heard another pop in the air as another shining star burst into a red glare that lit the streets amongst the fading light of day. More than ever, Philadelphia was a crimson hell, even outside the walls and the remainder of the city. Around us, I could hear teams of slavers moving in groups, trying to locate or head us off along with hunt down the remaining steel rangers that had gone to ground. Occasionally, a burst of intense violence broke the evening air as one was found and, more often than not, slaughtered their hunters in return. With Brimstone, I felt safe. He could take on any small group of slavers no problem, so long as his wounds didn't get too bad. In the past half hour, he'd been stabbed, shot, and bucked more times than I could count, all while defending us from the groups of slavers that infested the city on their escape prevention patrols. I'd been forced to loot through their corpses with Glimmer to try and find healing potions to keep Brimstone Blitz at his height. My mind felt ready to snap. The tension was unbearable. Intense lengths of fear and hiding, punctured with brief moments of heart-pounding terror when those clacks and calls sounded our detection. Already, I could hear griffins in the air, reinforcements from stern to watch the rooftops and wider open streets. The efficiency of Red Eye's army was downright scary in its ability to work as one, bound by his charismatic will. Was this the unity he often spoke of? I was not doing well. Already, I was having to round corners only to see Brimstone turning the next one, Glimmerlight attempting to do her best to keep sight of both of us. I knew Brimstone Blitz wouldn't leave me, but my condition was worrying me. My throat was feeling raspy again, the more time we spent in these thin, contaminated urban areas that had been exposed to the balefire, the more my disease was starting to make itself known. Running was causing my breathing to spasm on burning coughs. It wasn't lethal yet, only bad due to the exertion, but I needed Radaway within a day or so.
Come on, Murky. Just keep going. We're all tired.
Glimmerlight was clearly digging deeply herself, but my own body just felt unable to push much further. The last time I'd actually rested that wasn't recovering from some injury or illness was long out of memory. Many times, I'd worked for days at a time, pushing or lifting heavy cargo. But out here, all the obedient endurance just seemed to fade. Could I even operate properly as a free pony? Rounding the next corner, I found Brimstone halted at the end. Oh, thank you. Dropping my pace, I fell on the ground beside them, trying my best to get any air possible into my clogged lungs.
Mark!
Brimstone glanced back from the corner.
Get those lungs of yours working and listen. Where are they?
Even nodding felt like an effort. Closing my eyes, I tried to shut out everything else and just concentrate on listening. Around us, I could hear crumbling, sizzling, hissing of broken industry and half-faulty spark batteries. Philadelphia, even outside the wall, was nothing short of an industrial powerhouse of a city, ruined or not. In the distance, shouts and orders, some from down below. I could hear the echoes of charred walls and metal containers. Others didn't echo. They were louder sounds, probably griffins above us. We couldn't risk the main road still. The smoke deadened sound, and the concrete maze that was the industrial park in this location made it incredibly difficult to pinpoint the sounds by distance. But they're that way, and that way. I pointed with my hoof, behind us, and off to the far right. Glimmerlight peered around.
Well, we can't go left. The gate out of this park is still locked shut. Guess we just stay the course. You sure there aren't any others?
I don't know.
Come on and listen.
Brimstone was not in one of his friendlier moods. I imagine being wounded and healed so often in a short space of time would do that to a raider's attitude. I'm trying. Concentrating, I blocked out everything but sounds. I tried to tune out the ambience. The wind was irregular, but easy to ignore. A beeping from some old control room in the factories was persistent, but clearly not to do with slavers. I tuned it out. What else? A thick stomping underground not far away. A ranger in a cellar? Flutters in the air ahead of us. Oh dear. There are griffins up ahead, and I think there's a small trio of slavers about to move into this area and... A sound entered my ears that I knew all too well. It wasn't a living being. It was the sound of metal scraping and grinding along scrap-constructed gears and pivots. Philadelphia was opening its gates. Even this far out, I could hear the clunk, clunk, clunk of the massive gears sliding from tooth to tooth. Moments after, the trundle of wagons and the clatter of many hooves on the ground followed. Even Glimmer seemed to pick up the far-off sounds, nodding.
Well, I guess Stone wasn't kidding about reinforcements. They'll be reaching us in 5 or 10 minutes if they stick to the main road. Remember, they know what section we're in.
Why are they trying so hard to get us? We're only 3 slaves. Why can't they just let us go? My protest sounded like whines. They somewhat were, but it was born of nothing but frustration at this endless run. Glimmerlight sighed, rubbing my mane lightly.
Red Eye doesn't like losing workers, hun. especially not when it includes two of his biggest prizes. A Raider Warlord and one of the few
Steel Rangers, right? Her face narrowed, almost looking as though she wanted to disagree like I'd been wrong, before stroking my mane again and even quickly hugging me. Tightly.
Yes. Brim and I, Murky. We're the ones he wants back.
What had that hesitation been? No matter, we needed to get moving. Any longer and they'd... I heard a flutter. I knew that sound. Get down! I screamed, throwing myself behind the nearest large bin in the alleyway. Glimmer and Brimstone dived to the side as rapid-fire streaks of magical energy tore up the length of the alley from above. Dirt was fused to a goopy green that pulsated and stunk of fried air in little chunks, as was portions of my cover. Move! Brimstone roared, grabbing me and swinging me onto his back before galloping off. Gripping his mane as tightly as I could, I found that the wagon had been nothing in comparison to the rough ride here. We took off, galloping out of the alleyway into a storage yard, long stripped bare by red-eye slaves, leaving things too heavy to carry. Empty pallet trucks and deserted train carriages made it a metallic maze surrounding the central cargo rail building. Above it, I could see a cartoon-esque pony riding a tiny train, filled with smiling workers. If only... More griffins dove from the clouds, their scout having spotted us by sheer luck. Brimstone turned down between two lengths of train to avoid most of the incoming fire, sticking to the right as rounds pinged and ricocheted between the carriages. I felt my mane whip, whether from the wind or a passing bullet I didn't know. Glimmerlight followed us, breathing heavily but determination lending her the strength to keep pushing. At the end of the two trains lay a third mounted on the same rail we were galloping down, its back carriage open to a passenger compartment. Hearing the platform creak under the weight, I held on as Brimstone launched himself into it. With windows exploding and melting on either side in a cascade of bright colours, Brimstone hurtled down between two lines of seats. The train had to have been partially armoured against zebra ambushes, for few holes were made but for the small windows, and their weapons didn't penetrate the main chassis. I heard the thunk of taloned feet landing above us on the roof. Brimstone stopped short, knowing that to burst out between the carriages would be little more than running right into their line of fire. I could see him thinking, glancing to and fro. Stern's griffins weren't going to give us that time to think. With a sharp sound of impacts on glass, I saw small metal apples held down and tossed through the broken windows. Rolling to a halt before us, thin bands pinged off them. Grenades. Glimmerlight was the first to act. Almost screaming, she pushed the boundaries of her stamina into her magic and hurled the lethal orbs as far down the carriage as she could. Unable to lift them, they just skidded along the floor while we ducked behind the seats. Shielded by Brimstone, I covered my ears. There was little point. The noise was so intense that I felt my ears pop and replace all sound with a keening whine. I didn't even hear the sound they made, just a dull whomp. The shockwave made my stomach churn and my head ache. Again and again, grenade after grenade. Painful shots in my ears and spikes of pain through the middle of my skull. The entire train lurched and shook again and again as such explosives set itself off or detonated others early. Dizzied, I opened my eyes to find Glimmerlight almost collapsed on the floor. Worry overrode my pains and I pulled myself over to her, trying to help her stand. Her hoof was tapping me, her mouth moving with no sound emerging. Holding my face up, she nodded through hazed eyes. Sound gradually returned.
I'm okay. Just tired. I think I've burned out. Too much in the stable and now this.
The sounds of falling train parts and popping flames surrounded us. My thoughts turned to the griffins. They had to have retreated to let their detonation go off, but did they think us dead? Brimstone made the decision for us, bellowing for us to move before they decided to come and check, amidst the smoke that now shielded us. Yet, as we lagged, he shook his head.
You two won't last in a run with flyers. Move through the smoke, get inside the station, and lay low.
Glimmer shook her head, staggering to her hooves.
We need to keep moving and...
No arguments, Glim. Get in the fucking station.
Both Glim and I stood in virtual shock. Brimstone had been firm, but he had never spoken to her in that tone. Ever. I felt Glimmer begin pulling me with a hoof. Staring into Brimstone's eyes, I saw the authority that had destroyed entire settlements for that second, reflected in the smoke and fire of the battle. Even as Glimmerlight tugged me down the train, that glare bored into my eyes. Not for the first time, but certainly more than ever, I was beginning to see the beast inside that began emerging in the middle of such chaos and violence. In some manner, I felt like I was running away from him. Hearing his thick stride behind us, I followed Glimmer through the train. 3 carriages later, we heard the griffins landing behind us, obscured still in the smoke of their own grenades. Screeching and shouting when they found no corpses, I heard their talons making a rampaging charge across the tin floors.
Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Glimmerlight was muttering to herself as we limped and pulled one another as fast as 2 ponies could. I ceased to hear Brimstone behind me. Had he stopped? My legs felt like dead weight, exhausted beyond compare. Stumbling over all the wreckage, we were only moving 1 carriage for every 3 the griffins were bounding through to catch up. I didn't want to look back. All I might see would be those razor-sharp claws wanting to rip me apart. Memories of outrunning the thresher machine began to re-emerge, prompting mewling and whinnying. We couldn't leave the train. If we did, we'd be gunned down. It was a simple race to...
Contact ahead. 2 slaves.
Engage and eliminate.
Against all my fear, my head turned. 2 griffins, a male and female, black and white, were launching between chairs and leaping over wreckage to the carriage behind us. Equipped for close quarters, both had knives drawn. One with a pistol in his offhand. Where was... Brimstone Blitz exploded from behind the door. Having purposefully stopped to wait on them, his titanic weight bore down on the 2 griffins from the side. Frenzied, I saw him actually bite the arm carrying the pistol. Snapping and snarling enough to draw blood and make the griffin drop his firearm. Screeching at a pitch that dizzied me, the griffin spun, racking the knife across Brimstone. Normally, griffins were considered bigger and stronger than a pony, but even they seemed small compared to Brimstone in such tight quarters. Tearing a chunk of flesh away with his teeth, he roared with bloodlust. 1 mighty hoof slapping away the knife as his forehead collided with the griffin's own. A sharp thock barely registered before he stamped down hard with the front hoof on his stunned opponent's hind leg. Legs were not supposed to bend that way. The griffin squealed, falling to the ground. Caught unaware, the female griffin whirled to face the unexpected foe, only to find her companion hurled into her, hard enough to drop them both into a seat. Brimstone reared up, dropping both hooves down on the pair, hard enough to snap ribs on the male and win the female beneath him. Using the time, I saw him go for the knife with his mouth, a mad glint in his eye, and... I felt Glimmerlight pull my head away as he lunged. The screaming started. Even holding my ears covered, I could still hear it, like ripping cloth apart, accompanied by long, wailing cries that finally stopped after far too long of a time. Hidden by the chairs that obscured the corpses, I could still see the draining blood and dirtied feathers dropping onto the floor and slowly spreading. With a sudden jolt, his smeared face turned to us.
Why are you still here?
We didn't need any encouragement. Turning, we galloped as fast as we could, little more than a determined canter. Both our heads were drooping, and I could see Glimmer's legs beginning to wobble under her. I could feel my lungs heaving to work, almost as hard as my limbs to get air. Hopping off the train, we found ourselves in the warehouse shop floor. Chains and hooks surrounded us, all of them hanging from giant ceiling-borne cranes. Already, I could hear griffins on the roof trying to shout to their comrades. Single shots whipped into the hard ground as skylights smashed and dropped razor edges either side of us. Glimmerlight galloped into a group of officers nearby to the edge of the yard, spurring herself to dive into and through the open doors even as the ground chewed up behind her. I was still 20 feet out, way too far to... A griffin landed atop a train beside me, the short-barreled weapon pointed directly at me. Acting before thinking, I ducked, rolled under the train, only realizing why this was a horrible idea as I felt my bandages yank and tear. I clutched at my shoulder and screamed at both the sucking wound's pain and the clatter of fully automatic fire mere feet above me. Clawing, pulling, and struggling, I pushed myself to keep crawling under the train towards the officer's Glimmer had moved into. The train only moved parallel to the doorway though. I'd have to leave and make a run for it sometime, but I couldn't run. I had to try. 3 legs only. It'd look silly, but I had to keep going. Drawing my head out from under the train, I saw the griffin stalking along on top of it, head lowered. She hadn't spotted me yet, and... yes, she had. Her head jerked around, the barrel following even as I begged her not to shoot. Please, I'll come back. I'll come back to my master.
Too late, Pipsqueak. Stern says you die. That means you die.
Her talon clenched on the trigger until the entire train lurched, shaking the griffin's balance until it threw her off and sent her shot wildly into the air. Swearing colourfully, she twisted in the air and landed on her hind legs directly atop me. One hind leg snapping down on my neck and pushing me into the concrete. My squeal of agony from my shoulder being under my body drowned out into a rasping sound as her weight pressed down on my weak lungs. Her weapon was pointed around before spraying through the train itself. Why? What was she? A 2-foot-wide train wheel hurled in from the other carriage like a child's throwing disc, slamming directly into her chest and pinning the mercenary to the ground. A crisp snap told of broken ribs. Following it, Brimstone Blitz launched himself through the middle of the carriage's cargo doors and bounded over to the fallen griffin. Stamping on the gun, bending the barrel, he barely even hesitated before another ferocious stamp cracked her skull off the ground. If she had remained that way, she may have lived, but groaning in pain only attracted the Grim Raider's attention, leading him to stamp again, and again, over and over, until her groaning stopped. Pulling myself up, I felt him bend over and pull out one of the last small healing potions we liberated from the slaver corpses before carefully dragging me towards where Glimmer had hid. Already, I could hear other griffins taking to the air to close in on the screams. The moment Brimstone got us behind the doorway, he closed it, throwing cabinets and desks against it like playthings until he had brought us at least a little time with the makeshift blockade. My shoulder was stinging as the healing potion took effect, the bleeding coagulating again into a thick, hardened mass. The potion wouldn't get rid of it, but it would stop me bleeding out a while longer and let me walk. Skittering on the slick concrete floor, I cast a glance around. We needed a hiding spot. This was my area of things. Rooms. Too obvious and natural. Vents. Glimmer and Brim wouldn't fit. Storage cupboards? Only one way out. Damn. The entire building was big enough to survive a nearby balefire detonation, but held no safe rooms. I pathetically bucked a small sign in the wall in frustration, before tripping over my own hooves. What idiot designed this place to not have any safe rooms in a major industrial city?
Murky, what's wrong?
Glimmerlight glanced sideways at me. I'm trying to find an underground bomb shelter, I ranted, staggering in a small circle. It'd be the best place to hide in. I used to get crammed in one back in Manhattan, so I know big wartime buildings have them, and they always have an exit in case the building came down. We can hide in it and escape to the outside, but no pony left any directions.
That way?
Glimmerlight pointed a hoof towards some side officers. Wait, how? But, what? Wait, I knew why. I see. You're a steel ranger. You know all about pre-war buildings.
Oh, well, actually, I just read the sign you kicked.
Despite her exhaustion, she managed a thin smile. Turning, I saw the green and white sign filled with indecipherable words, still legible amongst the seared interior. Not for the first time in my life, I sighed and lowered my head. Illiteracy really wasn't fun. Without Glimmerlight, I'd likely be running around in circles trying to find it.
Hey, Murky. Positive thoughts now. Big nasty Griffin's about to drop in. Let's go.
I heard Brimstone batter down the door into the offices, revealing the easy access safe room slope at the far end where a huge steel door lay open. My stomach clenched when I saw multiple charred skeletons nearby to it, where they had just pulled it open before the fires had surged through the blackened building. My hooves crunched in the ash of light furniture and papers. All that seemed left was the bare structure and what bones survived. They had been so close. Behind us, I heard the surging of wings and wisps of air as griffins leapt in from the skylights. They were accompanied by a thumping as other slavers tried to batter down the door Brimstone had blocked. They had us surrounded.
Get in!
Brimstone arrived, grabbing my jerkin and virtually hurling me down the stairs. Painfully bouncing and rolling, I barely managed to get back to my feet and glanced back up to see Glimmerlight jump over the ledge and onto the dark stairwell. Brimstone glanced back, before snorting and pushing the door closed. From the outside. Her own hooves moving quickly, Glimmerlight tried to stop him, pushing futile against his strength.
Wait, what are you doing? Get in here, Brim!
The old raider didn't even stop scraping his hooves through the ash as the great door began to slide shut. Tangentially, it occurred to me that if those ponies 200 years ago hadn't gotten it open for us, we'd have been caught with how long it took even him to move it.
Those feather-brand bomb pots are going to surround the place. They'll be happy to wait. They know slaves are in here. They need a lure, something to get them off your tails while you rest.
Almost all sounds seemed to deaden as the ramifications of his plan started to weigh upon my mind. I found myself galloping back up the stairs to beside Glimmerlight. Words just wouldn't come to me. Her mouth was just open, shaking her head.
Look, we'll find a way. You don't need to do this.
Brimstone Blitz looked back at us, gore dripping still from his muzzle and bloodshot eyes quivering with the adrenaline of battle. Then, he smiled.
Won't happen. Griffins are patient. More than I am. Besides, I put slaves into this trade all my life. Killed ponies and just so much else.
I felt my eyes well up. This was too rushed. I didn't have time to prepare anything to say or how to react. My tears were not alone. Glimmerlight pressed her hoof against his chest.
Now, you want to save at least some.
Aye.
Well,
She narrowed her eyes.
you come back. I'm not accepting that the great warlord you've rambled on in my ear about so much is going to be beaten by a bunch of flying chickens. On my way here, I saw an old bank outside Philadelphia's main centres. You know it?
Brimstone merely nodded.
Then, we'll meet there.
She stepped back. I saw Brimstone's gaze turn to me. Not expecting it, I racked my brain for what to say. But hearing hooves and talons clattering closer, I just shook my head. Theirs was a story I shared. The raider and the runaway. But this was his moment to shine. Only 2 words really came from my mouth as I trotted forwards to hop up and lay my head against the side of his shoulder. Thank you. I knew I was crying. For once, the pony locking me away was doing it to save me.
Goddesses be with you both.
Brimstone rumbled the words, his hoof briefly arcing around to hold me, before gently pressing me back towards Glimmerlight.
Gallop safely. We'll meet again.
With that, the light died as Brimstone slammed the great door shut. His great stride sounded immediately, galloping away into the building. He had told me that he was always a raider, that there was no way to appear as anything else. But right now, I could not help but feel inspired by his determination to protect the ponies who he felt deserved it. He may not agree, but in that moment, he was as far from the raider as I could ever believe. Glimmerlight and I stayed on the staircase for some time, listening to the gunfire, screams, and blood-curdling war cries mixed with dull impacts and tearing metal. Gradually, they moved further and further away, before eventually ceasing completely. By then, I felt Glimmerlight holding me tightly against her with one hoof.
He got away. They didn't get him.
How do you know?
Not anywhere near enough gunfire to bring that big lout down. Besides, he still owes me 10 caps and a beer.
Her smile in my Pip-Buck's pale light seemed small as she turned and led me down into the emergency lights of the safe room. Remaining for just a second with one hoof pressed against the door, I couldn't begin to fully grasp the emotion. What was it? Sadness? Loss? Some pony had just thrown themselves into the grinder for me. And amidst my torn mindset, I just didn't know how to feel. The safe room had lived up to its name. Lit by amber lamps, we found multiple stale and hard beds surrounded by infuriatingly locked doors that, by Glimmer's reading, led to an armory and a food locker. After the canteen in the stable, I was considering it unlikely that such food would still be edible anyways. Trotting ahead of me, Glimmerlight flopped herself down atop one of the bunks, sending a small shockwave of stored dust flapping in all directions. Finally off her hooves, I heard her sigh deeply, looking for all the world that she might fall asleep on the spot. Nervously, I trotted onward, checking the far side of the room for... yes, the exit tunnel that would lead us to the outside once things quietened down. Not to mention, give us the moment to catch our breath.
Here, Murky. Lie down. Rest a minute.
Glimmerlight tapped the bunk beside her, which I obediently hopped up upon and settled upon. Feeling my back muscles and whip marks ache and sting, I slid off my saddlebag and pulled the goggles from my face. Brimstone had been a topic avoided. Glimmerlight was insistent about his safety, while I simply didn't know what to even say. This was all so alien to me. Ponies caring for me, fighting for me, being so far outside the wall and hunted during an escape attempt. When I had run for the wall, I never imagined this sort of reality. In my mind, it was me running and running forever, and outstripping the chains that bound me. But the reality was... harsh, unromantic, and full of twisting turns that bounced me from encounter to encounter without any downtime or chance to properly think. No long planning, no idea that survived the actual execution. It was just instinct and reaction mixed with cold, unrelenting luck and chance. The idea that I had once sat in Whiplash's storage room planning my eventual grand escape felt childlike and far away. This was real. Real was more tiring than I'd ever dreamt. Glimmerlight seemed to doze for a few minutes at a time, her breathing eventually steadying. She had thrown her robes off in the heat of exhaustion once arriving, leaving them crumpled in a heap below her. I lay upon my side, gently easing my sore wing under me, and just watched her. The pony who ruffled my mane, who hugged and smiled at me, who reassured me and cared, who had fought to save my life. Others had done some of those, but more and more, I was feeling a connection to Glimmerlight like a friend. But not all of my mind accepted it. Slaves didn't have friends. My very presence here was a slight against my place in life if I listened to the deeper, darker areas of my own thoughts. The wall and my orders were my boundaries, but now I was across them. Upon my flank, I felt my cutie mark almost tingle in an effort to remind me, instructing me to wander off and leave her that I might return to the safekeeping of those who would guide me and tell me what to do, rather than face the uncompromising wastes. If I apologise enough to Protege, maybe. Shaking my head violently, almost butting my forehead against the pillows, I fought them down. That was just the fear talking. The fear of being caught and killed before I could do anything I wanted with life. My life. The one I'd been denied for how long? Oh, goddesses. I wished I knew how old I actually was. I didn't even know my birthday. I'd once been ordered to clear out of the barn and sleep with the Brahmin on the rock farm because they'd wanted to use it for a party in my master's honour. His birthday. I'd snuck out and crept up to one of the windows, glancing in at him and his family that owned me, getting drunk and laughing a lot. Maybe when I got out and found my mother, she could tell me when mine was. I did kind of really want to have a birthday someday. Just once. I wished I could feel the same urge for freedom that little Pip no doubt had felt. Something to boost me along to finish this and finally escape the bounds that were imprinted upon my very side. My eyes turned back to Glimmerlight. She wore a small smile as she settled. Not sleeping, but eyes closed all the same. What kept her so free and willing? What drove her? Perhaps Protege had answered for me long ago. She knew freedom. That wasn't all, though. Slaves in Philadelphia bullied me, stomped on me, stole my food and called me things like runt. Mocking noises of them screaming how I would die in the pit still disturbed my slumbers. But she had remained nice and caring. Even the best ponies had been broken by Philadelphia. Flippy Bit had his prejudices made all the more intense by the ignorance of slavery under Red Eye. Even I had almost stooped to stealing from a sick mare. But not Glimmerlight. Staring at her cutie mark of the 3 memory orbs, each of them glinting through the muck and old wounds any slave carried after time in Philadelphia, I began to see why. They were her key. Being able to revisit your free days. The good times. That must certainly help.
Murky, not to knock you down, but I think I'm a little old for you.
Blinking, I snapped back to reality. Blushing, I drew my eyes away from her flank. No, cutie mark, and bit my lip while seeing her snorting with laughter. Was she just winding me up? Your cutie mark, it just makes me wish I could, you know. Reaching between the 2 bunks, she, again, ruffled my mane with a hoof and giggled.
I know, and there are so many ways I could twist that sentence, but I don't think you have it in you. Well, until you get some charcoal in your mouth anyways.
She winked. I blushed.
Which reminds me, I've not had a chance to really get a glance at that book of yours. Mind if I take a look with you? It'll give us something to take our minds off of, well, you know.
Well, she hadn't ever done anything but support me before. Groaning as stiff and painful joints cracked and ached, I pulled over my saddlebag and yanked out my treasured journal. Glimmerlight rolled off her bunk to sit beside me, as I placed it beside me and opened to some of my pictures from a few days ago. I saw her frown as she saw me lying dead in the pit. The last image I ever drew before the mare gave me the idea to set my mind free. Flicking from page to page, Glimmerlight reminded me of that mare with the way she just accepted everything. Even down to the little snicker and sideways glance at, some of my pictures.
Careful what you draw, Murky. You're making me want to grab a mare the moment we get out of here.
Chuckling, she winked and continued. I didn't know if she was just being nice or genuinely did like them, but I felt settled enough to leave her to read through it. Shifting off my bed, I began to trot around the little safe room. It was cramped. Nothing was there without an express purpose. It was an appreciative nod, I rather enjoyed the concept of a bin that doubled as a chair when its lid was down. Only Glimmerlight's confused glance was enough to make me stop flipping it up and down by pressing my hoof on the pedal. What? It was good. Seeing her settle down and stare more longingly at the drawing I'd done of her, being watched over by Brimstone, I gave her some space by moving into the bathroom. Barely 4 feet by 4 feet. It was tiny. I didn't need to use it, really, but it was the only separate room. Nosing around, I cracked open the butterfly case within, finding little but bandages that fell apart in my hooves and a small needle. Memory flickered. I'd seen this before. What was it called? Yes. I pulled it carefully into a leg pocket and turned to a mirror. Throughout my life, mirrors had been nothing but a reminder and crushing visual sight of myself. But it had always been tempered. I knew I was dirty, weak, and a sick little slave. Now, when I could think clearer... Oh, goddesses, what had my life done to me? Before me, just above the low sink, I saw a scrawny, scared-looking buck, his coat so coated in rubbish, mud, blood, and rotten juices from the stable orchard that it barely resembled any singular colour anymore. My mane and tail had bits in them, stained in a dozen different ways just like the, by now ripped and blood-stained, fleece and filthy dark red bandages around my shoulder. But it was the health of my body. Drawn, almost skeletal, and covered in rad sores on my muzzle and hind legs. The eyes that stared back were not the eyes of the free pony I felt I should be. They looked terrified, out of place, and showed the image of a pony about to crack and run for the nearest thing that would tell him what to do, or how to live. Sunken into deep sockets and red with tiredness, I could see my own pupils shaking. See the edges tearing up as he saw his own cutie mark in the mirror that... I had to look away. Quivering and sobbing, I tried the sink and got a paltry trickle of brown water. Splashing it into my face, I scrubbed as best as I could. Maybe if I scrubbed hard enough, I could wipe away the slave, show the real pony I was supposed to be. The water was tepid, stinging my rad sores and small cuts I hadn't even realised I had. Time lost all meaning as I just sat and kept trying. Every time I looked up at my soaked and dripping face, I only saw myself looking more and more desperate and more pathetic than before. I knew I'd have to try really hard now to get it all off. To get rid of all the blood. Get rid of all the dirt of the place that hurt me. To get rid of all of it. I wanted to rid all of it. Coughing. Spluttering. I finally leaned over the bowl of the sink. Not sure which was the water, and which was my own tears. That's all I could do. Cry. I couldn't help any pony. I wasn't a hero like little Pip. Strong like Brimstone. Smart like Protege. Or as resourceful as Glimmerlight. Somehow, every time I did anything good, it all twisted in on itself within minutes. I just want to do something right.
You have.
Glancing back up, I saw Glimmerlight in the mirror behind me at the door.
You got out here. You saved my life and Brimstone's life many times. More than he'd admit. You are a pony that matters, Murky. Now come here.
Her horn sparked, flared, and immediately failed. Straining, it popped back into life just enough to pull a small towel from the top shelf into her hoof before spluttering and imploding the spell with a brief shot of light. Dampening the towel, she sat and wiped my tears.
You ever have any siblings, Murky?
I don't know. 6 of them, maybe. If my name says anything, but I don't remember any of them. My mum never mentioned any, so I assumed had been sold, or maybe there wasn't any. I don't know. The towel was coming off filthy on each rub. I felt her firmly wipe it around my eyes, avoiding all my sores. Her voice was quiet and comforting.
I never had any, but there was one little initiate back at Buckland Cross. He used to hang out with me because the others kept picking on him. They called him Safety Catch because he had a habit of leaving his on while in the range. Eventually, it got so bad he started forgetting who he was. Started using the name himself. Forgot all the good things he could do, like strip an energy weapon faster than I could strip some pony's robes if we got some alone time.
I couldn't help it. I lightly chuckled. She was just so carefree, overriding my sadness with sheer audacity. Yet, her voice turned poignant.
Thought he was useless, you see. He used to get so worked up saying he didn't matter. Didn't even remember that he'd scored top marks in the test my pop set for us. But the day he actually became a scribe and got the badge, well, he remembered. Saw what he was as soon as he looked in the mirror. That he was a smart pony.
The tail dabbed under the water again, before it seemed to die entirely and spluttered out. Pulling tightly on my cheeks, she kept cleaning before almost too firmly, rubbing my forehead with it. Biting her own lip as she did so, I winced as I felt her pull on my mane with it, as though wringing it out.
So I guess what I'm saying is, we can forget ourselves as it all piles up. But if some pony can show us what still lies beneath, perhaps it'll help a little.
Dropping the towel, she held her hooves on either side of my face.
He was like a brother for a while, really. Probably the only reason I wasn't known as simply that mare who drinks far too much at ceremonies. My sense of humour does exaggerate myself at times.
Almost hypnotized, my head was turned as I looked back in the mirror again. Green and blonde. My coat's colour. A gentle green, lighter than I'd ever expected it to be. My mane. I'd come to think of it as a light brown, but it was actually blonde under it all light and fluffy. The line between the dirt and what she had cleaned was as sudden as a fence. In reality, it looked a little silly. The front of my face clean for once, with some strands of my mane free of debris and dirt, but it gradually spread in my imagination. The artistic side of my mind filled in the blanks and let those borders expand to look at a colt, standing with innocent little wide eyes filled with tears, my two stubby little wings flapping. Gasping, I could see nothing but what the mirror in the fun farm had shown me. I'd almost forgotten the mirror house and the strange sight. The little slave, yet to acquire a life's worth of dirt and grime that would mar his appearance as much as it would mar his dreams. Not seconds later, I was wrenched out by merely blinking, breaking my daydream. Tears dripped from my face, but landed upon a small smile as I turned back to Glimmerlight. Glim?
Yes, Murky?
You keep helping me, making me see the right things. I don't think I'd have made it this far without you.
We all help each other.
I shook my head. No. I mean, with me being... me. Trying to work out what I am, who I am, what kind of pony I am beneath the years of being nothing but a slave. You keep guiding me, always being there for me. I know it's only been a little while we've known each other, but... Leaning down, she wiped away my wet mane from my face.
But what?
Well, a mare once told me we shouldn't forget or ignore the good when it comes, no matter how short a time it takes. You said you saw that buck like a little brother, right? I wanted to ask. Biting my lip, I looked away, feeling unfathomably embarrassed. Could you ever see me like that? Because I think I sort of see you like a big sister I wished I always had around. A brief period of silence reigned as Glimmerlight just looked down at me, before, gently, she pulled me close. Her impetuous embrace stopped only by concern for my wound, but her head leaned against mine. And in that moment, I felt relief beyond words.
Tell the truth? I was kind of hoping you'd say that, because that's how I was beginning to think of you too. We can't take time for granted. Days could be years to slaves, Murky. We take who and what we can get. So yes.
Within the underground room, amidst an escape attempt that could, or could not succeed still, there was at least one life-defining moment to remember. Family need not be by blood.
Yes, I will be. Your big sister best friend forever.
I'd like that. There was a brief moment, just allowing me to smile and hold on to the best pony I'd ever met. For about a minute, we simply sat within the safe room, between the bathroom and the main room, just permitting the moment. Eventually, she snickered, leaning back, her eyebrows narrowed and lowered.
But you do know what little brothers get, don't you?
She grinned. I just raised an eyebrow. I hadn't even had a sibling nearby to know. What did little brothers get?
Noogies!
No! What are you... Wait, no! Before I could react, she had me in a virtual headlock, rubbing her hoof on my mane vigorously. I squirmed as best I could while injured, laughing and squealing in equal amounts to try and get her to stop, waving my front legs to try... and make her let go. The smile I drew across my face seeming almost alien, as I softly added more width with the end of the charcoal stick. Then a little more. And a little more. Before I knew it, I'd drawn one of the most wide smiles I ever had. Almost as much as when I'd drawn myself on my own, on that page so long ago. Now, where was that one? Flicking back, I hunted it out. The one I had drawn just after gaining the ability to think for myself. Even a little. Back in the fun farm. Eventually, I found it. The one that had me on my own, grinning widely with my wings flared to either side beautifully. It still made me chuckle to think I could ever actually make a smile like that without being around little Pip's escape. But there it was. Just in the middle left of the page on my own, and I wasn't alone anymore. There had been something else drawn on it. At some point during the rest period, I had added some pony else. Now, Glimmerlight stood just to the right of me, about one pony's width apart. Clean, as though she wasn't a slave, her initiate robes well kept and draped tidily around her. But she was still about that playful energy about her posture. And on her face. Wow. That look, the sparkling cheeky grin, and alluringly casual eyebrows. One expression that comforted her friends and caught the attention of stallions all in one fell swoop. Feeling my hooves shake, I fought the urge to try and hug the journal itself. I knew finally why I had drawn myself to one side like that. I had been waiting for the friends I could add in later all along.
So, that's the mirror herself, huh?
Minstrel smiled thinly as he watched over my shoulder.
Although, I have to question. Regarding yourselves siblings within 48 hours of meeting, that seems a little, preemptive, don't you think?
I thought so too. But back inside Philly, time didn't feel right. Shifts could come any time. You could be underground in the pits working away, and not knowing for how long. You lived day to day. Anything that survived was a blessing. Death was so easy. I saw ponies burned alive, shot, or simply dying of sickness. Just so random and unforgiving. I only barely survived. Part of me wished I'd drawn her closer on the piece of paper, nearer to me. But it works the other way too. If some pony feels trustworthy and close to you, then I discovered just how amazing you could feel in a few scant hours. I'm a Pegasus, Doc. Ponies hate me.
I don't.
But almost all of them did. The slaves are ignorant. They don't know how to think about situations like ponies outside do. Even I didn't realise that until I opened my eyes.
They?
All of them. Little Pip, the mayor, the DJ, Brimstone, Glimmerlight, even Protege in some weird way. I don't understand. Some of them I only saw for less than a few seconds, but it matters when you're a slave like me. It's all I have. All I had. I sniffed, wiping my eyes with a hoof, still flinching from my forehead throbbing at the motion. That's why I think we were able to just know that we would be so close no matter what. We'd saved each other's lives already. Slaves like we are, I mean, were? That counts for everything. A period of silence began as Minstrel carefully mulled this over, leaning on his front hooves and staring almost unflinching at me. The only noise was the occasional sniffle from me, and a wind banging upon the window shutters every few seconds. Eventually, Minstrel got to his hooves.
Well, I suppose we need to get her back. That much is obvious. Afraid I can't help too much, but, well, wait to have a chat with Sunny. She knows the area and the ponies you can trust. Might even give you a few tips on how to fire a pistol she carried in with you. I'll see what I can cook up to maybe give you a hand when you head out the door. Just take it easy. I can see in your eyes how much you want to just gun it and find Glimmerlight. But you're badly wounded and recovering still. And not to mention your memory ain't quite there yet.
He shrugged, wandering towards the corridor and tapping the sofa on the way.
Lie down and get some rest. Goodness knows you need it. I'll wake you up when Sonny gets back. Who knows? Maybe you'll remember something yourself.
Nodding silently, I wandered up to the sofa and rolled onto it. The soft cushions allowed me to lie on my side without the worrying of wing ache. Oh, I had a name for it now? And just flicked through my journal. Perhaps if I went far enough back I could find something to... No, I couldn't do that. Not now. Definitely not. If I wouldn't dare look at my slave past before, doing it now would just... It would be too much to handle. No, the years of my life would remain indistinct and behind me. I had no wish to see imagery of me being abused. Time passed, just lying and thinking, not thinking, and being confused. Freedom didn't feel quite so monumental as I thought it would at this stage. My heart didn't feel like jumping for joy. The shackles on my flank still stung every time I looked at them. I felt out of place. Searching through my saddlebag to distract myself didn't help. I came across the elements of loot I'd taken from Stable 93. Mostly just odds and ends I'd carried for Brimstone and Glimmerlight. A spanner, a small hammer, screwdriver, nuts, bolts, and some little bobby pins. But striving, I pulled the largest item, a thick book. One I liberated from the memorial room. Or was it? I couldn't precisely remember. The haunting passage through the bowels of the stable had left my memory indistinct and blurry. Or maybe that was the blow to the head. Time would only tell if everything would reassemble like it should. Weighing the book in my hooves, feeling the heavy weight, it dawned on me how long I'd been pushed by adrenaline and fear. How I'd been able to keep going, even with a sick body and the injuries every slave carries. Typical. When I wanted to be heroic, I was weak. But when terrified, I could push myself. If only it were the other way around like proper heroes. But this book... I'd picked it up to give to Protege, but I was free of that conniving and caring master forever. Helping, and saying he wanted to be kind to me 1 minute, then sending me into stables the next. Holding the cover of the book in my hooves, my eyes fell hopelessly on the words I could never read. I would be glad to never have to rack my brains just talking to him ever again. So, why did I feel like I was going to miss handing him the book? Gritting my teeth, I dropped it back into my saddlebag. With some degree of revulsion, I set about pulling my fleece back on. As much as Minstrel seemed fine with my wings, I didn't like feeling naked and exposed like this. Whimpering as I squeezed my head through, even wool pulling across my skull feeling like industrial sandpaper, I finally flopped down, breathing hard and switched on my Pip-Buck's radio. The music ceased. Celestia, damn it! I missed one of Velvet's songs. Immediately, my mind realised what it had thought and sent approximately 8 prayers towards the sky in forgiveness. One for each letter of her name, just to be sure.
You know, I really don't think I'll ever get tired of that stuff. Year after year, the same sounds were on any good DJ's ears. We got the main daily news coming up in a few hours, but for now, I got a little tidbit that just can't wait. From over across the plains, I've been getting reports of a large-scale confrontation between Red Ass and the Steel Rangers. Seems even with all the problems out in the main wasteland, those two groups still want to clobber one another. But that's not the best part. Through the network, it seems that the slaves of Philadelphia took the stable dwellers' actions to heart. There's a colossal search going on, and it's clearly not for Rangers. You don't go hunting for ponies in power armor with whips and shackles, do ya?
My heart leapt. This was... Oh my.
So, I said to those of you out there, good work. Now, get out safe. They don't let any pony go easy. Indeed, the walls are only the first obstacle in their network to catch runaways. Be careful, because ain't nothing gonna hurt more than being dragged back through those gates in chains. I thought of saying what roads might be less crowded, but I'd be one pretty big idiot to think they ain't listening in too. Now, we've not had any reports of actual escapees yet, but by all the great goddesses left in the wasteland, I sure hope there is. Any pony out there gets a whiff of a slave that escapes, let old DJ Pone 3 know, will ya?
Find my friends. Find little Pip. Find my mother. Now, I had another one to add to the list. Proudly trot into DJ's very studio as the one who got away and say, I did it. Giggling so happily to myself with the thought that my throat seemed to spasm and cough, I squirmed and curled up on the sofa, clutching the half-destroyed Pip-Buck tightly enough I feared it might bend. The DJ clearly knew little Pip. Maybe he could put in a good word too? I might be weak, deathly sick, and, for now, without allies nearby, but at least I knew there were others out there rooting for me, wishing my dreams to succeed as much as I did.